Breaking news from WRAL.
We are following breaking news in Durham, where the Durham freeway is shut down. Protesters have entered the freeway right at Mangum Avenue. You're watching live from Sky 5 as you see the protesters marching through the traffic that is now stopped on the Durham freeway. We understand from Sky 5 that this backup is about a mile long. This is getting dangerous as people are meandering through the cars here. We have Ken Smith, who's right there in the thick of the protest. Ken, bring us up to date on what you're seeing there.
Yeah, Deborah, Gerald, photographer Mark Simpson and I are on the move, as you can see. Just a little while ago, before you all came to us, many of the demonstrators staged what they call a die-in demonstration, many of them lying across the roadway in both directions. We were just at Duke Street and Highway 147, but right now they're back on the move, as you just mentioned. They're walking through the crowds in the southbound lanes of Highway 147 at this point. We have not seen any arrests so far tonight, and also we're not seeing anyone bothering anyone in the cars as they walk by.
We continue to monitor this breaking news of a massive protest in Durham that has gone onto the Durham freeway, stopped traffic, and now protesters are on the move again.
Yeah, several hundred protesters involved in this, staging a die-in in the middle of Highway 147. We have Sky 5 up above. We have Ken Smith down on the street with the protesters. Let's go to Ken live now.
Hey, Gerald and Deborah, we're on the move again, and now the protesters have made their way from the southbound lanes of Highway 147 and now walking up the northern-bound lanes. We're trying to figure out if they're going to exit on Chapel Hill Street, and of course, that exit takes them back toward the Durham Police Department. They just got off of Highway 147, and right now they're making their way down Chapel Hill Street. They just passed the Durham Police Department. Did not bother the Durham Police Department. As a matter of fact, there were dozens of officers in front of the Durham Police Department just in case, but the demonstrators just walked right past. Right now, we're thinking they're heading back towards the DPAC.
We continue to cover up these commercial breaks so we can bring you this breaking news in Durham, where the protesters have stopped yet again. We've watched them start at the CCB Plaza, moved on to the Durham Freeway, where they were there stopping traffic for quite a few minutes, and then kept marching past the Durham Police Headquarters. Now they are back at DPAC.
As far as we can tell, it's been peaceful so far, with police officers keeping a safe distance. WRAL's Ken Smith is on the ground with the protesters. Let's go to him live and see what the situation is now. Ken?
Right now, the protesters are back on the street here on Mangum. They stood in front of the DPAC for quite some time chanting, and amazingly enough, as the DPAC audience are making their way into tonight's show, some of the people waiting to get into the DPAC tonight applauded when the demonstrators came and started chanting in front of the DPAC. As you said, so far it's been rather loud, sometimes boisterous, but peaceful demonstration.
What started as a peaceful protest has now seen its first arrest in Durham.
Ken Smith is there right at the DPAC where the protesters have stopped for now. Ken, the police seem to have been very patient up until this point, not really even getting close to the protesters. So why now are they starting to make arrests, does it appear?
Well, apparently this situation quickly deteriorated a short time ago. What you're seeing are at least 2 or 3 demonstrators that are on the ground in zip ties. They apparently were told to keep moving because apparently early in the evening we've been telling you that as long as the demonstrators kept moving, the police officers were just monitoring. But at this point in the evening, the officers were asking the demonstrators to keep moving. Some of them decided not to move and decided to push back against the police officers. And then, of course, they were brought down to the ground and arrested, as you can see. These are the only arrests that we have seen so far tonight. Other demonstrators are continuing to chant. They're continuing to beat their drums. They're continuing to hold up their signs. But at this point, the 4 or 5 people that you see before us, they're the only ones currently under arrest at this point. Everyone else is just standing around and staying put. I can also tell you that the show that was supposed to start here at the DPAC might be a little delayed because everybody in the DPAC are not going into the show. They're actually perched at the windows looking out onto the scene that started out as a peaceful demonstration earlier tonight at CCB Plaza, but quickly deteriorated about 5 minutes ago.
Right now in WRAL News, hundreds of people take to the streets of Durham in protest. People are outraged over a decision not to indict a white New York City police officer in the death of a black suspect. It began peacefully, but now we are seeing our first arrests. Hello, I'm Gerald Owens.
And I'm Deborah Morgan in for Jackie tonight. We've been following this protest since they began just around 7 o'clock tonight.
WRAL's Ken Smith has been in the middle of the action all night. He joins us live now with an update. Ken?
Gerald and Deborah, Durham police officers just took away about 6 or 7 demonstrators who were arrested a short time ago. I'll get out of the way so photographer Mark Simpson can help us set the scene currently. Right now, Magnum Street is completely shut down with demonstrators. At this point, demonstrators are continuing to chant. They continue to hold up their signs, but we're not seeing any incidents of unrest so far since the 4 or 5 or 6 people who were arrested and have been taken away at this point.
Our breaking news continues now in Durham, where police appear to be trying to break up the protest going on right now in front of the Durham Performing Arts Center.
Take a look at the police officers in riot gear advancing down Magnum Street. They've been blowing a huge, loud whistle and then announcing that the demonstrators are required to disperse immediately.
Right now in WRAL News, demonstrators in Durham clogged downtown streets and shut down the Durham Freeway, staging what they call a die-in in the middle of the road.
Tonight, the streets are clearing. Several demonstrators had to be taken into custody after brief clashes with police in riot gear.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Gerald Owens.
And I'm Deborah Morgan. We have been following these protests since they began just about 7 o'clock tonight.
WRAL's Ken Smith has been on the ground in the middle of the action tonight. He joins us live with an update. Ken?
Yeah, Deborah and Gerald, we're on the move again because police officers in riot gear have apparently dispersed most of the demonstrators. Just a handful of them are standing around right now. And what you're seeing are the Durham police officers in riot gear holding their position at this point because I don't see any demonstrators. I think they may be asking those last protesters to move out. That's what they've been asking them to do for the last hour or so since this began as a peaceful demonstration at the CCB Plaza around 7 o'clock tonight. Hundreds of demonstrators came to that plaza just to voice their concerns about the recent deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Garner. This after they were there for a little while, they started moving out and then made their way onto the Durham Freeway, completely shutting down both lanes of the Durham Freeway. At one point, they staged die-in, many of them lying on the roadway in both the northbound lanes and the southbound lanes. They did that for a little while and then eventually made their way off Chapel Hill Street toward the Durham Police Department, did not disturb the Durham Police Department, and it eventually made their way to the DPAC. They made their way to the DPAC at the time a show was beginning there. They did not disrupt that show, but I can tell you it got a lot of attention, and amazingly enough, many of the audience members from the DPAC applauded the demonstrators as they showed up in front of the DPAC. That lasted for a little while until things started to deteriorate, and of course there were dozens of arrests in the last hour, the last of which we just saw on Foster Street, which is just a street over from where we are. At this point, police in riot gear are making their advancement down Trinity and Washington Street, where we are tonight. Apparently, they're making their way back to the Durham Police Department because it appears that they have successfully managed to disperse this demonstration that has lasted now for at least 3 hours. I can tell you, we walked all over Durham tonight with these protesters. And from our vantage point right now, I can tell you from the officers, it appears that they believe that they have been able to disperse this demonstration tonight. Again, dozens of arrests were told. Let me rephrase that. Dozens of people right now are in custody. We will find out probably in the next few hours or so if any of those folks will be arrested. But right now, many of them were taken away in a bus and are being held right now at the Durham County lockup. They're just being held at this point.
And Ken, I want
to
reiterate, no injuries or property damage, correct?
As far as we have seen tonight, photographer Mark Simpson and I have been on this scene since it began at 7 o'clock tonight. We have not seen any major injuries. Now, of course, somebody ends up on the ground, they probably suffered some type of bruising. I can't say that for sure, but in terms of major injuries that required an ambulance being called, that did not happen. And we did not see any property damage to speak of. Now, the other question is, they shut down a major road race tonight, and they did not, from what we saw, they did not disturb any of the drivers that were on 147 or the Chapel Hill Street where they were. And I'm moving because the police officers are moving, so we got to keep moving as well. But we didn't see any major property damage or any major injuries that required the calling of an ambulance. If Mark can give you one more look and tell you and show you why we're moving, this is why we're moving, because the Durham Police Department in their riot gear, they're moving, and that means they want you to move out of the way as well. So to avoid any confrontation or with Durham Police, we're following the law as we move on.
Go ahead and get you a little bit bigger cushion, Ken. Get out in front of those officers. Great work tonight. That group, orderly and persistent, as we've seen for the last several hours. Ken Smith, live in Durham.
So as we recap what happened tonight, hundreds of protesters marched through the streets of downtown Durham. The rally began at CCB Plaza and moved along Mangum Street to the Durham Freeway, where the protesters were met by police. There they were staged, and they did what's called a die-in. They were lying down in the road in protest.
Now, this, of course, blocked traffic on the freeway for about a half hour. Later, they marched past the Durham Police Department and stopped outside the DPAC. That's where several people were taken into custody as they came face-to-face with police in riot gear.
We'll have a complete wrap-up of what happened tonight. Tune into WRAL's Morning News at 6. Good night.